All right, all right, all right. What's going on, Denise?
What's up, Darryl? How are you?
Oh, I'm good. I'm good. It's hot in LA, so I'm just trying to stay cool. You know how that is.
Oh, I do. I do.
Yeah.
I was able to stay cool yesterday doing that Chicago thing and had an Italian ice lemonade.
Oh,
Man,
nice, nice.
passion fruit, orange, and guava.
Whoo,
That's
whoo.
that's what I said.
Man, I think there's one Italian icy place here that I know about in Culver City. After the show, I think I'm gonna take Junior and go see if we can check it out.
Man, the simple pleasures in life. We
That's
must
right.
partake.
That's right. That's right. Well, hey, so let's get into this show. So there's a lot going on. There's always, and what I mean by always is shit. For the last 50 plus years, there have been growing issues between black men and women, and they were really subtle at first. It was just a lot of propaganda that mostly came from feminism, which is an operative of white supremacy. But then it started to just come from anywhere and everywhere. And the most recent incident that we can start with is this whole thing with transgender uh, community. When, because everything is a fad, or it seems. When the transgendered people, the men switching to women, women switching to men, or pretending to, started their whole push. I think it really started getting like hardcore about 10 years ago. Yeah, probably about 10 years is when they really started with the propaganda machine. Actually, a little bit before that, because that's when your president went to war. Obama went to. He said he couldn't do nothing for black people because they were stopping, but he went to war for illegal immigrants and the LGBT community. And if he didn't give us nothing else, we got all gender bathrooms in a lot of places around the country. Woo-hoo. Anyway, that's when they, I guess, felt really, really empowered. And so they started to encroach in other people's arenas, particularly the men who were pretending to be women started coming after straight men. And of course, you got to double down and come after straight black men. So they had this piece where I mean, it was even a billboard near my house. I don't know. I didn't even ask anybody. I should have. If there were built similar billboards across the country. I live in a traditionally black community, Baldwin Hills, and it was a billboard, and it said, uh, black trans women are black women too," and it talked about how they demanded straight black men love them, date them, provide, protect. And I was like, no, brother, that would make me gay. And I'm not. And so I dismissed it because I didn't think it would go anywhere until black women picked it up and started rocking with it. And so this was problematic in and of itself, but it was also problematic and is problematic because with a lot of black women, when they disagree with black men, the first thing that they will say is you're gay. Like, black women have this alliance with gay men, well, which is cool, do your thing. But if those are your people, why then the first thing you say about to a straight black man when you disagree with him, oh, you must be gay. So that's why this thing with the trans men, the men who were pretending to be women, was particularly egregious and scary for black women to pick up. For black women to turn to straight black men and to say, you need to treat them as black women. They're black women too. And you need to date them, love them. And I'm just like, this is a lot of bullshit going on here for people to. You have a whole group of people, the trans folks, who are saying, we want these rights, we want this respect, but then they want to trample on the rights of other people, particularly straight black men. And while they were doing it, it was really, really bananas to see so many black women join in. Haki Shakur Ami, what's up, brother? It was really, really bananas. It was scary to see so many black women join in. So here's where we are now. Now the chickens have come home to roost because now that same community, the community of men who are pretending to be women, are now coming after women. White women are upset, and now black women are upset because these dudes have decided well, them and the women pretending to be men have decided that they're gonna all come after womanhood. So the dude, I don't even know who's doing it more, but they've decided to rename women. You guys don't have menstrual cycles. You're a bleeder. You don't get pregnant anymore. You're birthing people. Um, and then this whole weird thing with the trans people when they get their Google cut off and have the doctor dig a tunnel, they want the doctor to call that a birthing. I mean, no, a bonus hole, and then they want to call it a bonus hole on women as well. And I'm like, you know what, man? I'm not cisgendered. I don't want your damn bonus hole. I don't want all of this renaming, reconfiguration. And if you were born with a penis, I'm not gonna date you. I want nothing to do with you. I just all this. And so anyway, so now black women are upset because they're saying, yeah, these people are coming after them. And so a lot of these sisters are saying, black men, we need you to join in, protect us. Nah, nah, we're not doing it because that's not our fight. We already put a flag on our mountain. And our mountain was the mountain of straight black men who were saying, if you are not a straight black woman who was born as a woman, we're not going to date you. We're not. So yeah, so we've got some issues to work out. There's other pieces down that rabbit hole, but I'm going to go ahead and give the mic to Denise. And as a black woman who was born as a black woman,
Yeah.
like you know,
So you know, you you dropped a lot there. There's a lot to process. Um, but I'm gonna go in just a slightly different direction, and then I'm gonna come back. So you were saying one of the first things you said is that everything is a fad these days, and I think that's true.
yeah,
But what I believe is not a fad and very much here to stay um, is are strategies that will create a further chasm between black men and black women. And so when we look at some of the issues that we're hearing on both sides with LGBTQ conversation, it's really puzzling to me um, because I can remember seeing conversations on social media um, and even in magazines where Black women who were identified as lesbians and presented as masculine. I remember a whole layout in a magazine where they said that they were presenting um, as better men than real men. And that was really disturbing for me because I think that one of the things that we as Black people have to be committed to doing is walking in the room Black first. Like everything else you bring, that's who you are. I'm not knocking it. There's space for all of us. And I think what happens is that we have, you know, each group, whatever your secondary identity, secondary and any other tertiary identities, um, those are the paths in which white supremacy gives us outs. Why? Because it's, we
Yeah.
talk about other people don't want to trade places with us. A lot of us don't want to be in this space called blackness.
That's
And
right.
so we find, these roads and these paths where if you identify, if that becomes your primary identifier, oh, I'm a woman, and I'm not going to choose between the two. Well, I tell sisters all the time, your blackness was determined when your mama and daddy started making googly eyes at each other. So we had,
That's right.
so
That's
what,
right.
whether you were going to be a woman or a man, or decide later in life that you were something
Other.
else,
Yeah.
that was after, that was post your racial identity being defined. So that's the first thing. A lot of this is attached to not coming into the room black first. um and then I think this issue where we have black women who did it largely took up the mantle of, yes, trans women are women too. And here's the thing, and you and I kind of had this conversation. As a black woman, if we want to make space for trans women, I think we have the right to do that. What I find troubling is that we then extended that to take license and say, well, then what that means for black men. And I think
Yes.
one of the things that we have to, I don't know what black men do, because I ain't one. But I do understand, as a black woman, and particularly seeing the propaganda, what we see when a mic is put into a black woman's face, it is often not just your everyday black woman. It's usually a black woman who self-identifies as a feminist or as a femme. And so just having um a more, I hate this word, but a more diverse um, presentation of black womanhood doesn't happen. And so all we're saying is, like I said, black women who identify in these two categories, sometimes it ends up, being one and the same, and what their attachment is, their allegiance to, or even how they view black men. And so I think that as long as we have this propaganda, the only thing that we're really doing, even women who don't identify it, we're simply parroting, some white liberal ideas that really don't make any sense. I mean, it's just, again, as black women, if we want to make space for trans women, as women, we have the right to do that. But what you don't ever have the right to do is then to speak for a whole different group. And then especially is egregious when you aren't even on good terms with that group, because it
Ooh.
you know
Yeah.
it further disrespects them, it
Yes.
further dismisses them, and it really paints how much we disregard their value and their humanity, but also just their presence in our community. So I, I don't know. I don't know what my sisters was. I don't know what we were thinking about. I
Yeah,
don't.
I kind of think I know, and it's sad. I mean, you hinted at the fact that we already, black men and women, aren't on very good terms. I mean, our marriage rate is down, our birth rate is down. We have so many dating issues confounded and compounded by the fact that there are a million podcasts by a bunch of morons who are just saying stuff because they want likes and clicks and follows so that they can become influencers. So we've got so many people who are examining and talking about black relationships more than any other relationship, and they are talking about it typically from the perspective of the black man. This is what the black man needs to do for the black woman, or this is what we want as black man. And even that doesn't always go well because it's usually by some goofballs, uh, who are
Right,
you
right.
know. And I hate to say it, I wasn't a fan of Kevin Samuels, but a lot of what he was saying was on point. Like he was righteous with a lot of what he was saying. I didn't like the whole high value man. That was really goofy to me because people are people across all walks of life. People are doing their thing, and it just kind of is what it is. Cornell Shedrick, what's up, big cuz? Ronise Hodo, how you doing, sister? Susan Renee Powell Sommerfeld, how are you? Um, we have a situation where a lot of people are speaking for, especially for straight black men who either aren't straight black men or aren't with straight black men, and still, like, a lot of sisters. I find it peculiar, Denise, that in a lot of conversations, that I either observe or participate in, when black men and women disagree, as I said earlier, one of the go-to responses from uh, uh, black women is to call a man gay. But let's pull them all out. If you disagree with a black woman and you're a straight black man, she's going to call you gay. She's going to say you hate your mama. She's going to say you hate black women. And she's going to say you love white women. So now we've gotten into this weird space where a lot of these black women have decided that, or they did, now they're trying to backpedal now that they're getting attacked, but they decided, as you said, they could speak for black men as far as what the approach to men pretending to be women would be. And I hate that I have to say this, but it's just because it's pretty much on the same level as the not all this and not all that. But I want to say this because the LGBT community has become so fucking hostile for a group that claims to want their rights. They are hostile as hell, not only to black people, but they're hostile as hell to straight black men. And so for the trans people to come at us and not only try to define us with that cisgender bullshit, which you can shove that up whichever hole you got, your bonus hole, your third, fifth, 16, I don't care. Shove it someplace because I am a heterosexual. I am straight. I'm not cis. I'm not accepting that. But but to have so many people coming after us to redefine who we are, and then to have that group come at us and to be so hostile, and to watch black women join them was
Well,
bizarre.
I think that in fairness, I think that the joining them, um and and I haven't read everything, I don't know everything, but I feel like we began that sort of partnership, for lack of a better word, before we really saw the hostility. And actually, I think that the partnership is what may have even exacerbated some of the hostility, because we already had a damaged relationship with straight black men walking into that partnership.
And
And
by we, make it clear, by we you
by
mean
we black women, we
yes.
already had a damaged relationship, certainly one that was in need of repair. I mean, it's still in need of repair. And so I think it created a ready-made um I think it created a ready-made script for LGBTQ to adapt. If we were already talking about
Absolutely.
black men as the enemy, as black men, I know I have said this on this show several times, but it bears repeating. This thing about black men being, basically the villain of the black collective, and I think it's really important to say this. Again, it bears repeating that
Mhm.
is such a white supremacy concept,
Absolutely.
and we hear it parroted by the elite. We
Hmm.
hear it parroted by our scholars. We
Hmm.
hear it parroted by Black women, particularly feminists,
Yeah.
and now LGBTQ. But even in that, it is so prevalent because it's such an incredible scapegoat for white supremacy, not just because they simply hate black men and they need somebody to pick on, but because it is what they use to justify all of the heinous stuff that they've done
Cool.
to to black to black folks. And so I the reason I bring that up again is because, with it being or originating from them, we've also had straight black men who have parroted that, having very liberal talking points, if you want to call it liberal values, whatever the case may be. But they joined in the party too. And I keep going back to that article that Damon Young wrote. I want to say, is it what, 2013, 2017, about the straight black man being the white man of the black community. So
Yeah.
everybody in our collective is parroting this. And so we got to really, and this is why it's so important to really get to the core of what's happening, because if everybody is pointing to straight black men, right, and yet any data, any indicator, I can't even speak now, any indicators that you pull up will not substantiate the things that they're saying, right?
Right.
So
Right.
then that really tells you how deliberate this conversation is. I'm reminded, talking about sort of how the partnership that Black women forged with, um, LGBTQ, and I want to say LGBTQ as a movement. I am not talking specifically about our Black gay brothers and sisters,
Right.
or however you identify in terms of your sexuality. I am talking about the movement, because in the same way that feminism has been dangled in front of black women like candy, the movement, LGBTQ movement, has done the same with our, as Dr. Cleo Monago describes it, same gender loving brothers and sisters. And so we got to be really, really clear about that. So
Yeah.
that relationship I think it exacerbated the situation. And if I can point fingers, which I will, the article that Jamil Lemieux wrote, excuse me, when Dave Chappelle did his stand up for Netflix, and was talking about the trans community. And so whole article was supposed to be about Dave Chappelle and the right or wrong or of what he was talking about in his stand up, but really what it was an indictment of black men. And in her
Absolutely.
article she said, basically black men are the villains because they are responsible for oppression and they oppress black women and now LGBTQ. Get out of here. Get out of here, please, on a skateboard that has rusty wheels. That's what
And
I
don't come
need.
back.
And because that doesn't
Yeah,
even make any sense. Anytime any of us in the black collective are looking at black men as the villain in our community, and we, first of all, it doesn't even give space for the trauma that has happened to black men within our space.
that's
And
right.
then when you ignore that, that is precisely what absolves white supremacy because we're
Yeah,
so insular with it. We're not going outside of that circle. We're like, oh, there's all this trauma in our community. Well, let me see. Who could it be? It must be black men, right? Oh,
right.
but wait a minute. They experience trauma. So, okay, but we're going to ignore that they experience
We're
trauma.
going to ignore their
We're
problem.
gonna
That's
we're gonna ignore their trauma. They're the cause of the trauma. They don't
well,
trauma doesn't happen to them. And
yeah,
so you just keep going in this little tiny circle and you never go outside of that and look at all of the things that have been stamped on our DNA that is still happening to us today via white supremacy. And I think it's one of the most heartbreaking um stories in our collective story.
absolutely. Well, I'm gonna, I probably say it every show. Dr. Neely Fuller said, if
Bears
you don't
repeating.
understand, it always bears repeating. If you don't understand white supremacy, then everything else will confuse you. Which is why you have a lot of our sisters who call themselves feminists, which for them it means something different than the insidious propaganda of
That it is.
feminism that comes directly from white
Right.
women, because they don't understand what's really going on with white supremacy informing feminism that then comes to our community. But it's really peculiar too for black women. As a black man, it looks so bizarre. Preston James, what's up, big brother? It looks so bizarre to me as a black man to have black women say, you need to provide and protect. How can I provide and protect a group that, number one, refuses to do anything to contribute to a union, which is why there are fewer unions? If you don't want to work, you're saying, I want a provider. You better get a damn job, because a man is not your retirement plan. But if that's the way you look at me, that's a problem. If you also look at me as a protector, that is a problem, unless you are my woman, my wife, my daughter, my, you dig me, my loved one. Then, and even some cases, because I had to throw away, a family member who wanted to be protected but wasn't, within the confines of, someone who I could actually protect. But I want to say this, before we move on. Black women love, they have weaponized our dear brother Malcolm. They have weaponized him and weaponized his words by misinterpreting what he said, when he said black women are the most unprotected women in America. They have weaponized that by misinterpreting it to mean, or to pretend that he meant, oh, we don't protect black women. That's a damn lie, because that's what the entire movement was in the 50s and the 60s. It was about, we need to be able to protect our families. We need to be able to protect our community. So why would he say that we don't? What he meant was that America's laws and customs are designed to protect white women. They are they are designed to leave our women unprotected. He did not. So when these women say this bullshit, oh, black men don't protect us anymore, I'm like, well, now you make us think about not
Well,
protecting you by saying some silly shit.
yeah. Yeah,
But I want you to look in the prisons, and you'll see prisons and cemeteries, and you'll see the black men who've been out there protecting and lost their freedom or their life. Go ahead, sister.
well, I think that your point about misinterpreting and then weaponizing Brother Malcolm's words, again, something else that bears repeating, is really important because it points directly to how we either don't understand or just totally ignore the role of white supremacy and how systemic, racism is meant to divide. That's one of many things that it does. And so this idea of taking, especially taking, Brother Malcolm's words, someone who absolutely loved Black people, who loved being a Black man,
Yes.
who was, an incredible husband and father, who, there was nothing he did that would ever indicate that he was racist or
You blanked out, Denise. But I know where you were going. There's nothing in his entire existence that would indicate that he didn't protect black women. That was his existence as a part of the Nation of Islam. That was certainly their mission. They were like serious about protecting women, and even the Organization of Afro American Unity that he started. That was the black man's complete and entire existence. So for black women in 2023 to start to revisit, I mean, some have even revisited the entire black movement to say that it was about black men wanting to capture their own piece of patriarchy and establish patriarchy in the black community, which is so incredibly and dangerously ignorant, because during the movement is when white supremacists, through feminism, started to plan and plot the switching of our community from a patriarchy, which it still really wasn't, but really now it's a full fledged matriarchy. When you say that 70% of our children are being raised in female headed homes, how can you make that statement but also try to create some kind of patriarchy within the black community? It's really like it's like you took your brain on purpose and wiped your ass with it in order to make that kind of statement. It's really bizarre. And so yeah, so back in the 60s, the 50s and 60s is when we really started to see the splintering of black men and women. And what we've seen since then is not just a splintering, we've seen a wedge be driven between us, to the point now where we have difficulties talking. Forget about having relationships and building families. We have problems even relating to each other and having um, discussions. And so the biggest thing for me, when I hear black women say black men don't provide and protect, then the biggest thing that I want to be able to say is you need to be under a black man who will protect you. And so if you get into this whole thing with I'm not going to be under a man, no man's going to tell me what to do, then you don't even understand what a marriage is about. But what a marriage, what even a strong girlfriend boyfriend relationship is about, is an agreement that if a woman is doing what she needs to do for her man, then he will protect her. As I said, if you look in the cemeteries, you look in the prisons, you see black men who have been protecting. They're there because they've been protecting black women. And if we get to the point, which we may, where black women continue to press black men by telling us that we don't protect them, that we don't provide for them, a lot of us are starting to give up. So that's where you get the whole passport bro uh, movement, which it just got a name. It's been going on, and it is gaining some ground because for black men, especially black men over 40, who find themselves unable to have discussions, unable to create solid relationships with black women in America, then they find themselves having to look elsewhere. I'm a black man over 40. I'm about to go on a fact finding mission in the South because I'm hoping that in the South that they still have some customs and traditions in some of the small towns, so I can find myself a young healthy black woman who was raised by a black man, and we can have something good to create a foundation upon. But in these big cities, I've tried the online dating. Of course, I've tried regular dating here in LA, which is the armpit of dating for Black America. But, I've tried to do long distance dating in some of these big cities, and it's pretty much the same because there's so much uh, anti-black man propaganda. But I'm going to go back to the premise of the show, and I'm going to go back there to make another statement. The premise of the show is black woman's relationship with the trans community, such that they not only accepted their propaganda but took license to overlay that propaganda on straight black men. That has become a problem for black women to speak on behalf of black men. That has become a problem because we see way too much of it, to the point where it's hard to talk to some of these black women because they're already telling you what you think, how you feel as a black man. So, how do you have a discussion with someone who is already giving you all the information that they feel is going to come from you anyway? Basically, they're not listening. They're not having a discussion so that they could listen and learn. They're waiting so that they can speak. And so what does that do? That really diminishes our ability to have conversations that could then work through some of the difficulties that we've been given, right? If we want to work through some of our issues, because we know that men have issues, women have issues, but if we want to work through those issues, we can only do it by actually listening to each other. We can only do it by actually having conversations that with each other that are informed by each other and not by propaganda that we've gotten from other people. Glad you made it back, Denise.
It was a little bit shaky there.
All good. We got you. We
Woo!
got you.
Thank
I
you.
uh, I kind of went in a circle. I took it from where you were, went back to the original premise so that I could talk about our difficulty, black men and women, in speaking to each other.
Yeah, I
Shantae
could.
Morgan Carter, how are you? Just wanted to give her a shout out.
Yeah,
Yes,
I
I
could.
went back there.
Yeah, I could. I got you on my phone, but I could not get back into the. So I was watching it, but I couldn't get
Okay.
back into it. So yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So basically, if we want to, move forward, if we want to resolve anything, we're gonna need black women to stop speaking for black men. Like that. It's so destructive. And I've gotten to the point. I'm gonna be honest. I don't talk to sisters anymore when they start telling me who I am and how I feel. I disengage. I've been on dates. I'm talking to women. They're like, "Oh, well, you like black women? How many black women you dated? I mean, how many you like white women? How many white women have you dated? You ever been to prison? You ever been with a man?" Bye. Like there's nothing to talk about. If you have already decided who I am, and it's just it's really bizarre that now black women are having this, you know, what I want to say, this other relationship with the trans community that they embraced. Now they have, a problem with them because, that's the first thing that they want to throw at straight black men. I mean, when black women, of course, not all, when black women were on this whole bullshit propaganda trying to tell straight black men to be open to having dates and sex and all this shit with trans people, one of the things they were saying to support their argument, most of y'all are gay anyway. Like, what? What are you talking about? Like, no numbers, no survey. Like, they don't even ask anybody. And I'm glad earlier that you brought up Dr. Cleo Monago because when I was writing my column years ago, he and I got a chance to dialogue. For people who don't know, Dr. Cleo Monago is, well, I won't call him a gay activist. He is now an activist for same gender loving black people. He encourages same gender loving black people to leave the gay white organizations, including GLAD, including the LGBT element of he is suggesting, which goes to a statement you made, Denise. He is suggesting that they are black first and then relate to each other secondarily because they are gay, lesbian, bisexual. And I think that is powerful. I think everyone in our community should understand who he is. Here's how dope that is. Because what he is saying is be black first. And what the same gender loving black people will find is that they have always had a safe space in the black community. You're not seeing black men running down the street, let's go kill some gay people. We don't, that's not our thing. It never has been. And that's why my favorite uh, writer, the reason why I am a writer, James Baldwin, who was openly gay, that's why he always made it clear he is black first, who happens to, and I think
Well,
that's important. Go ahead.
well, I was going to say, first of all, Dr. Cleo Monago, even to give further credence to what you just said, is that he actually coined the term same gender loving, and I want to interview him so badly. He is an incredible um, incredible human being, an incredible lover of Black people, really
Yes,
understanding the trauma. He talks about what he identifies as a trauma trance that so many of us are suffering from, understands clearly what racism and anti-blackness has done, is doing to the Black community. And this brother is just someone that we all should know, we all should be reading, we all should be
absolutely.
looking to him, definitely for guidance. But what I wanted to say is that the idea of coming to the table as Black first, because again, when your mom and daddy were making googly eyes and etc, but the flip side of the coin is white supremacy doesn't know who you are dealing with in your personal life, right?
Right. That's right.
White supremacy, if I'm a Black woman and I walk into an office and they decide that they don't want to pay me accordingly, and this is what we have to understand. My issue is not, it should not be that I am not getting paid as much as a black man. My issue should be that I am not getting paid as much as a white woman or a white man. Because, see, that's where the real disparity is, right?
Yes.
Because
Yes.
if my man, if my black man is making more money than me, if he's getting paid more money than me, why would I have an issue of that? Because it's coming into my home, coming into our community. And
How
so
about
we really got to think about what all of this really means. Like, the conversations that we really should be having is dissecting racism and anti-blackness and how it works, because we don't seem to understand that that is exactly what is at work. This is why black women can look at black men and say, oh, I'm so happy that, my childhood dream of, having a black princess, and and it just healed the inner child in me. And we never question why Tiana or why this Ariel does not have a black prince. Like, like, these are the kinds of things we're running out here supporting Barbie. Oh, like Barbie, and we're getting pink Barbie. And white people they flipped their wigs when Miss Halle Bailey this was
Little
identified as.
Mermaid was black?
And so you go out, they done told you they walking out of theaters with
Hmm.
their children, with their little white daughters, because they don't want to this area, they're just not going to deal with it. But the moment that the Barbie movie hits, which wasn't even for children from my understanding, and it was so misandrist, and we're flocking to it. We're having Barbie parties for our daughters. It just
Isn't
doesn't
that
make
what we
any
do? Isn't that what we do?
it
I mean,
doesn't make any sense.
I was talking to my son a couple of days ago about Black Panther because we don't know where it's going to go whenever they do a third one. But it was tragic for me, and he understood it too. That in order to take the story into a new place, they decided to bring in Prince Namor, which was a character from the comics who was kind of like Aquaman. It was Prince Namor was the Submariner man. So that was cool. You want to bring him in to the storyline, but they really wedged really racist anti-black bullshit in there because they decided Prince Namor, first off, he's Mexican. You had to put some Mexican people in a black story, but it was worse. They put them under Wakanda. How'd the Mexicans get under Wakanda? So they were under Wakanda, had the same plant that gave Black Panther his power, but it gave them more power. I'm like, and they had the whole history. Like, I'm like, how did you crowbar their bullshit from America, the Americas, and put them under Wakanda, stronger than Wakanda? So I mean, it's just so many instances
And,
of
and
how
right, and then Wakanda in the first movie was struggling with making a decision. Are we going to share all of our knowledge and our
with the world.
powers to help other black nations? Are you kidding me? This is this black people, dear black people. Like that I need we need a movie, dear black people, and it would be very different. It would
Ooh,
be very different. Dear
I
black
like
people,
that.
please understand what blackness and racism are. You have to
Yeah,
understand what it is, because it, it it is really doing a job on us. And I there's no other way to explain it. And and it's doing exactly what it sets out to do, which is have us on opposite, like we're constantly like drawing scratch lines talking about meet me at 3:15.
you took me back to the south side of Chicago. The
I
school
mean,
got out at 3:15, and you was
yeah,
gonna fight somebody.
you was
Meet
gonna
me at
fight
three
somebody.
fifteen, punk.
That's what we're doing. We're stepping up we're always at the scratch line, and somebody
Yeah.
that looks like us is on the other side of it, and it doesn't make any sense.
Well, particularly, it doesn't make sense when the people who are on opposite sides are black men and black women. Like, that's the bullshit we have to stop. And that's why, I think one of the things I said, well, you could hear it. One of the things I was talking about is how black women want to be provided for and protected, but then they also want to be smart mouthed and uncooperative. So it's like, if you create a relationship with a black man, he will protect you. If he loves you and he knows that you're on his team, he'll lose everything to protect you. But you can't believe that there's some, because we don't even have real communities anymore. But you can't believe that there's just some random black men out there who will just come to your aid. Most of us can't get down like that anymore. I know when I was younger, any black woman, I'd come to her assistance. But I've learned, because some of them will turn on you with the dude that just whooped on them. Some of them started that shit, and we just don't have the agreements anymore. We don't have any covenants in our communities anymore. We're just out there. And when you, as a group, black woman, decide to partner up with other people, when you decide, black woman, that you're going to tell straight black men to be open to other men just because they're calling themselves women, when you decide you're mad at us, so you're going to throw yourselves at white men who are throwing you back, because your numbers, marriage, they're not going up. But when you start saying, "Oh, we're being forced to date white men," when you start doing these things that show you're disloyal, what's that look for, Denise? You thinking they about to come at me now?
I, you know,
I stay ready.
I'm
I
yeah,
stay
I'm
ready.
not I wasn't getting that. I didn't get that memo about being forced to date white men.
Well, a lot of black women didn't
Like
get that memo. Yeah,
I didn't get that
yeah.
memo.
Yeah, but some of these chicks are loud and they're out there saying, "Yeah, that's where we need to be. We need to explore other races." You've been doing that. You've been doing it. Go do it some more. But if you're ready to actually have something real with black men, it's going to require that you be something that the majority of black women haven't been, who, Lord, for over 40 years. Over 40 years, which is why our relationships are declining, which is why our birth rate is declining. You can't, I mean, and back before I knew that Michelle and Barack were hoaxes, I used to refer to them a lot. I used to say, if you want to be what Michelle has, you have to be what Barack has. And they ain't like that. All I'm saying is there's accountability on both sides. But when you jump over and decide that you're going to, like, what if black men woke up tomorrow and decided we're going to create an, an alliance with, I'm trying to pick somebody, uh, with Asian women. And we're gonna allow Asian women to say crazy shit about black women, and we're gonna support whatever they say and tell black women, get over it, go on over here and do what these Asian women say. Black women would lose. They'd probably start trying to pick us off.
But I mean, but even I mean, because that I mean that sounds as you selected it. I mean, it does sound ridiculous. But
Yeah.
let's create another scenario.
Right.
What if black men created an alliance with white men?
Ooh, you mean the one that black women refer to, but that doesn't currently exist? What if we actually did it?
What if you actually created an alliance with white men? What would that look like? What would that look like for Black women? What would that look like for our
Community.
children?
Yeah.
What
Wow. Yeah. I mean,
the plantation would exist in our communities.
our communities would become full-fledged
That's
plantation.
where that's where
Yeah.
like we have to like this whole thing, we got to really think what we're doing, people. And the thing about it is that none of us as Black women, I'm a Black woman, I am not saying that there are not times when, as a Black woman, I don't feel challenged, or that I do not feel like I am being respected because of my womanhood. I that would be a lie. There are not times I it would be a lie for me to say that there are never times when I feel vulnerable because I am a woman. But I promise you, where I feel the most unsafe, right, is because I'm Black. Like that's when I feel like, when I'm on my job and I feel like I'm not being respected, or if
Yeah.
I'm just in the grocery store and I'm trying to ask somebody about something and they're halfway listening to me, if at all, or if I'm in the bank and this white man, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on with my money, and they want to say something sideways. It is not because, oh, I'm a woman, it's because I'm Black, and we need to really rethink what we really present as these sensitivities about being disparaged as or feeling like we're discriminated against as women. You really need to do some re-examining of that. Is it because you're a woman, or is it because you're Black? Because I promise you, and I ain't got a paycheck to lose, but I'd be willing to bet it, and that
Yeah.
is because you're Black.
Right. Right. And that's why it's so important for Black women today. As a Black man, I'm not telling you should be this, and this. I am saying simply just be what Black women used to be. That's all. just be what Black women used to be, because I promise you, there has been no movement for Black men. We haven't made some great changes. There is no opposite of feminism. We haven't made changes because we have not created an alliance with white men. So we haven't made a whole bunch of changes. The stupid shit that Black men are doing is the same stupid shit we've been doing, and it's typically stupid over a Black woman, over sex, or over just the love of a Black. Those are the stupid things that we do. We do it over money as well, and not much has changed. Maybe it looks a little different because we're not really in the kinds of communities we used to be in before, where a lot of other things mattered that just don't matter right now. It's the Black woman who has changed. The Black woman went through feminism, adopting it and trying to pretend that it meant something different for Black women, and then they could become empowered. The Black woman told Black men, "We don't need you anymore. You're beneath us. We're strong. We can operate on our own." These things didn't come from us. They came from white women that the Black woman adopted. We didn't give those things to Black women. We didn't tell Black women when all the propaganda and then the physical attacks on the Black community, like opening, killing affirmative action, and then opening the floodgates for Black women to go to college while stanching off the stream of Black men going to college. That we didn't do that, to the point where then we didn't tell Black women to start saying we're more educated than Black men. We're the most educated group. Well, we didn't tell you to do that. We didn't tell you to say that. But what we do know that you don't like to say is that sure you're the most educated, you're also the most deeply indebted to the student loan industry, right? That people don't want to talk about. And black women aren't making the kind of money that they love to talk about in public. Oh, we out earn black men. We're making this, we're making that. No, you're not. One thing that a lot of you don't like to do is to actually do research. You do some cursory research, and you'll see first off, you talk about, oh, I want a six-figure man. Less than 15% of Americans make over six figures. When it comes to black Americans, it's less than 5%. And in that 5%, it's more men than women. We still out earn women. So to say all of these things, we don't need you, we can do it on our own, we out earn you, we're more educated, but we need a provider. Huh? Like none of that makes any sense. And by virtue of the fact that it is complete nonsense, it should let you know that that's not yours. Someone gave that to you. And so the other part of Brother Malcolm's words that you don't like, black woman, is when he asked the question, and he was asking you especially, who taught you to hate
Told you to
yourself?
hate yourself.
So it wasn't the black man. Whatever you think we've done to you, whatever you think has occurred that we deserve for you to really treat us and talk about us the way you do that hurts you more than us, one of the things you have to understand is we didn't teach you how to hate yourself. I'm looking for a mic so I can drop it.
I feel you on that. Yeah.
Woo! So, so we are in trouble as a community. And to go back to where we started, the premise of the show that showed us where the other bodies are buried, black women, if you continue to partner with other people in order to come after black men and bring those people with you, you will further damage the relationship between black men and women, and you will find yourself less desired, and you will find yourself more alone and more unprotected. And I'm going to say this, and I know people are going to steal it and run with it, but I almost want to do a T-shirt that says "Black women are unprotecting themselves,"
I
because
can
that's where we're at now. I mean, if you're pushing men away, you're having children, and you do everything you can to fight with the dude to make sure he's not in the child's life. If you're making sure that you're not in a relationship, you're making sure that you don't have good relationships with the men in your family. Who the who the hell do you think is supposed to protect you, right?
Well, I and then I'm not even sure that I think we hear so many things again that are given to us. Um and and that's part of the problem, even just from a language, a communications perspective. And I know you know this as a journalist. When someone gives you something to say, it's not your own, right? So you don't have an intimate or inherent understanding of what that thing is. So it's like, and which is, when as a journalist or as a communicator, and you're speaking with someone and you ask them, in your own words, what does this mean, or tell me this or convey this to me.
Yeah.
And no one is asking black women that. That's because they're not interested in having those things examined or reinterpreted, or because it's even in talking about feminism, right? Let's take an easy issue, this whole thing about why should I not get paid the same thing a man gets paid. I ain't mad at you for having that argument. I just don't understand if that is being given to me through feminism, right? Then and as someone who is a black woman, I receive it. I don't understand why then you don't make it your own. Because then if you make it your own, then the argument should be, well, you're right. Why am I not making the same amount of money as white men? Like, make
Right.
it your own.
Yes.
And we don't do this, and this is exactly what's wrong with all of these trinkets in the form of movements, that all of us except for straight black men are given. I mean, it's that intersectionality wheel. There is no space on anybody, excuse me, there's no space on that intersectionality wheel, specifically for straight black men, unless you fit into some other category like the elite, our scholars. They make room in that way, because you're parroting sort of like that liberal speak. But other than that, there is no wheel, there is no allowance for the everyday straight black man. And I think that absolutely is criminal, not necessarily on their part, because we know that that's what white supremacy does. But I
That's right.
think it's criminal on our part. Actually, the word that that I had used in the past was traitorous, and I kind of got, you know,
I mean, but
looked
that's
at.
what it is.
They, people didn't take too kindly to that, but what the
Yeah,
heck is
but
traitorous,
it
and
is.
and we have to answer for that. And I don't mean in the terms of some, like, punitive way, because we're already being punished.
That's right.
It's because our community is not intact, our
It's
families
in
are not intact.
shambles. In shambles.
So but we have to be able to really look at that very closely.
Yeah, yeah. We're gonna have to have at some point. Black people are gonna have to, instead of having these, we're going to the Essence Festival. We're going to this destination. This we're going to do it. We need to have some real hardcore black think tank meetings where we actually start talking about who we are, where we are, and what we need to do. And in the course of having those meetings, black women are going to have some kind of mea culpa about forming this alliance with white women and feminism, especially the ones who've done it unconsciously, who claim not to be feminists, but say every single thing that feminists have been getting black women to puppet. I mean, that whole "I don't need a man," like, I never heard a movement like that from white people, from any other group. So how did we allow that to come into our community? You don't need a man. You've pushed the black man out of your home while you're having all of these babies, uh, but you don't want us around there. But then everything is our fault. Like, either we're there and it's our fault, or we're not there and it's whose fault? Because, contrary to popular belief, black men aren't. I know that bastard Bill Cosby said it. He said black men are walking away from a thing called fatherhood. That can't be true. If that were true, we would see child support battles and there would be a line wrapped around the building. But if you go to family court where they're fighting over custody, you'll see them with the line wrapped around the building. So it means that the system is working because the system doesn't want black men in these families. But when we listen not to just people making shit up, when we listen to the CDC, not the NAACP, the CDC, then we realize black men actually are upstanding fathers, because we realize then, because we didn't ask them to study that. Black men didn't say, "Hey, look, Center for Disease Control, can you go out here and take a look at fatherhood from a racial perspective? Come back and let us know what you find." They did that on their own, right? So if they found that black men are the most involved then we got to look at some of the bullshit that black women have been saying to us. And I continue to say this as my caveat to black women who are like, no, black men, no, 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 no. You are hurting black women. And some of the pain is self inflicted or relievable by the actions of your own hands, right? Because the things that that a lot of black women are doing are hurting black women. They're hurting black women and they're hurting black children. These aren't your alliance primarily should be with us. Because if you are allied with us, those are the ones who are protected. I'm not protecting women I know hate. I'm not
Yeah.
doing it.
Yeah, I mean, this thing about protection, because I'm not even like, I didn't know like that was a thing until I started hearing it being, sort of chanted.
Yeah,
Like I think we should almost call it like the PMP, like, the provider and protection thing. And, but because it just sounds so
stupid.
it really does. I didn't know that I was supposed to be looking for a provider and protector, and I think part of it, and maybe primarily, is because, um, even with my parents being divorced when I was 4, and I didn't, have a relationship with my father, because once the divorce, he left, but I always saw, um, black men providing and protecting their family. So I didn't know that that was
That
I
that
didn't
was the
know that
thing.
like I didn't know I was supposed to like actually be looking specifically for that. I just knew that these are things like they're so routine. Like you don't think about breathing. Like you're like, okay, let me see. I'm gonna breathe right now. Like you just do it, right? And
Yeah,
so this being a provider and being a protector, to me, in terms of the black men that I saw in my neighborhood, my friends' fathers, like, men in my family, like I understood it was just it was as natural as breathing. So it didn't
it's
I did
happening.
right. I didn't know that this, so as an adult, very much an adult. How much an adult we ain't got to talk about. But very
Yeah,
much as an adult woman, like, to hear this is very strange to me. I mean,
yeah.
because it just, like I said, eh, black men, um you know they take care of families. That's they under
What they
like
do.
we're such a communal people, and I think that forget that we've forgotten that, because, or it's been erased from our memory or something. I don't know, because I mean, that's just who we are. And so again, this whole idea of somebody giving you these talking points and you don't even know what they mean or what the implications
Just
are, that for
repeating
you
stuff.
repeating them, you just say, oh, this is what they're saying, okay, and you read the script and it's like, come on,
Yeah,
so that's but I'm holding out hope and prayer. But the more I think about this, the more I think it really is, having a much clearer understanding of what racism and anti-blackness in this country looks like.
yes.
Um,
Well, and we got to get to that point, and especially black women, because I think, and I keep saying it, the things that a lot of these sisters are saying, it's hurting black women, more than anybody else, black women and black children. But what's happening now with the whole demand for a provider is that now black men are deciding, you know what, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it because it was natural. Like, okay, you get married, you bring your paycheck home. That's what you do. But all of this demand, I want to provide her because I don't want to work. And not only do I want to provide her, but I want to provide her on this level, right? I don't want to provide her on this level. I want this lifestyle. Based on what? So now you have the majority of black women who desire and will only entertain seriously a minority of black men, and that's
That's
occurring with having children. That is occurring with our relationships. So when we hear a lot of these sisters say, there just aren't a lot of good black men. No, your expectations are shit. They make no sense because on a scale of 1 to 10, you might be a 4, but you're already said, no, I only deal with eights and above. Like, stop all of that. And you probably make 40,000 a year, but you want a man who's making mid 6 figures. Some of the delusion is so just
well, it's yeah. Well, it's also so European, like, it's just so European-based values.
yes,
Like,
yes,
I mean, I think about, my grandmother who will be 99 in December and, who has been
yes,
widowed almost all my life. But I listen to her stories. I mean, I sit at her feet and I listen to her stories about her marriage to my grandfather who did not make a lot of money at all. And he would bring his paycheck home to her. And in her description of that, it wasn't because, he knew she was the boss or it wasn't anything like that. It was,
right,
okay, I've been out, I've made, the money for our family because my grandmother did not work outside of the home, but they had 8 children. And so she took care of the house and the home. So she was the one who was budgeting what little money they had to make
yes,
sure that people ate and that they, I mean, she was the one who was saying this is what we need in our household and made sure that the money she didn't there was no she didn't have a me account, right?
right,
Saving for a girl's trip. you know
right.
Right, there wasn't,
It
there
was
was
about the family.
it was about the family. How are we going to make sure that these 8 kids eat
Yeah.
and have
And
clothing and have shelter? Because as my grandmother said, she could have gone down somewhere and got help and she wasn't going to do it. She was not going to sacrifice her husband, and also she wasn't going to sacrifice, this, what they had built as a family, and
right,
it was too important to her. So even something as simple as, and I know I've shared this story before, something as simple as filling out the lunch form. She's like, I wasn't doing that. First of all, I didn't want white people in my business like
that's
that.
right.
That's what she said. I didn't
Right.
want white people in my business like that. So, like we have not, um, we have not forged the right partnership, and that's exactly,
Yeah.
you know, we haven't.
And we're
Sisters,
not
we
even,
haven't formed the right
yeah,
partnership.
and we're not even, as a straight black man, I'm not even being approached by black women to form a partnership. I'm being approached like a barnacle, like a leech. That's how I see a lot of these women. They want to attach themselves and get whatever they can. I don't see them, even in the conversations when we're trying to date, saying, here's what I bring to the table, here's what I can do, here's what will make your life. I mean, they've gotten to the point where, a lot of these sisters, you don't ask me what I bring to the table. I'm a woman. That's what I bring. Like, that's so disgusting to me. You want a protector, provider, but I can't even ask you what you're gonna do. I mean, as you said, that is so European American. That's white business. You've been taught that, even though they don't practice
I was gonna say, even though they don't practice it, and you can look at their numbers, if you look at their, their marriage indicators and how old white women are when they first get married, when they're onto their second marriage, like, and as compared to when we are now having our first marriage, etc. Like, they are very much so looking to be someone's wife,
it. Yes.
and understanding what that means. And the interesting thing about it is, and I tell people this all the time. Now I'm a little bit older than a lot of folks, but we used to have that thing called the yellow pages. And when you would run down, you needed something repaired in your home, let's just say you needed a plumber, you were hard pressed. It would be a whole big old thick section for plumbers. You
Right.
would be hard pressed to find somebody in there black that
Yeah.
was a plumber.
That's
But
right.
I guarantee you, those white plumbers had white wives, and their white wives were not complaining that
That they
they
were
were
plumbers.
plumbers.
And then, so these are the things that Black women have to examine. They have to have that come to Jesus meeting. Who taught you all of this bullshit? Stop blaming Black men. We did not teach you to hate us. We did not teach you to be our enemy. You got to understand who taught you. You got to stop
I'm not
pretending.
marrying a plumber. I'm not marrying a bus driver unless he owns the bus company. Miss Ebony is what did was it her name? Ebony
Ebony
Williams.
K. Williams, one of the
Yeah,
stupidest women
that
in
was
America.
that was
Just
so.
foolish.
Unless, cause and then and we've already talked about that too, so I won't travel down that rabbit hole, but I thought that the most disgusting thing that she said had to do with blaming it or taking it back to black boys being mediocre in school, and considering what we know that black boys face in our public schools, sitting in classrooms
Yeah.
with white female
Or
teachers
Black female.
or black female teachers. I was going to add that, who do
Yeah.
not like them and
Who
who do not
create
value them.
hostility.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah. So this whole thing about, wanting the protector and the provider, to me right now, talking about a trend or a fad, to me it sounds like code for, as you said earlier, I just want to sit at home and do nothing.
I'm tired.
I'm tired.
I don't want to work.
And you know what? I understand being tired, cuz I'm tired too.
I'm tired too,
I'm
sister.
tired too, cuz it's not getting any easier as we get
Mhm.
older.
Right. Right.
We are in between, particularly with me, I'm in, between, sandwiched in between children and parents, and what that means and what that looks like in terms of financial obligations. So black people work hard in this country. We know that. We
Yes.
all are tired, but this notion of just, you get to sit at home and what?
Yeah, that's not gonna happen. I
That's
mean,
not
for me,
communal. That's
it's
not
not community.
communal.
Look, as I love to say, it ain't African. It ain't even African American.
It ain't even African American.
It is some made up bullshit that just doesn't serve us, because over the next year, as I see my income, my career, everything just explodes, I'll be damned if I'm going to entertain a woman who isn't going to walk in figuring out how she can contribute. What
And
can I do to make everything better for you, for Junior, for me? You know what I mean?
if for whatever reasons, it isn't working, maybe you're going to school, but or maybe you are going to be a full-time, homemaker, whatever that means, but that
They don't even
has,
want to do that.
you know but even with that there's value in that, if you really doing it.
If you're really doing it. But
If you're really doing it.
these chicks don't want, they'll tell you up front, I'm not cooking, I'm not cleaning, I ain't your maid. Well, then why are you in my house not working?
Which can I know this is not really part of the conversation, but I really have to say something about that.
Do it.
The whole
Do
idea about not being someone's maid. I think it is really, and we haven't used this phrase in a long time. I think it's a crying and shame when, as a black woman living in a house with a man, whether it is your husband, your boyfriend, your intended, that tending to the house is something that is so off-putting to you
Yeah.
that you, or so foreign to what you should be doing as someone who lives in that home, as to put it off as maid's work. I think that's a crying and a shame. And for all of y'all who said that, I want you to know I did tell my sons, do not marry a woman who will not clean a house and who will not cook, because then she will not tend to your children and she will not feed them. So that is what I said to my sons. I just want you to know.
Hey, same message I give my son. It's like a woman has to have value, just like if I had a daughter, a man has to have value. So for women to think today that all they have to do is have a vagina and, yeah, I'm going to sit up, I'm not going to work. That's not going to happen. Let's go ahead and wrap it up, sister. Let me get your last words.
Um, Well, taking it back to the very first topic that sort of, jumped us off on this journey today. Um, a few years ago, I was having a conversation with someone on Facebook, and I'm not even sure how the conversation morphed into something, but this gentleman told me that I was homophobic because I would not date a trans man. And the only thing that I could say to him is that he was entitled to date whomever he wanted to date, as was I.
That's right.
And I was not going to tell him, and therefore he was not going to tell me. And so my simple point is, sisters, is that it was just totally ridiculous that we took up that mantle in the first place. Going back to my original statement, as women, if we wanted to make space for trans women, we could do that. But again, we had no business and no right and no agency
Yes.
to take that liberty to do that for men. And then finally speaking, I find it very interesting now that we are seeing some of the outcomes of being able to, sort of forge that partnership. No, it doesn't feel good that, we're looking at, you know, government documents where we are no longer called mothers, but we are now called birthing people to accommodate, um,
Yeah.
you know, the trans community.
Yep.
Which again, if they want to, if we make space for them, I think that's fine. I think you have to make space, for everybody. But I think we also have to be very clear when we are making these allegiances, especially when we are doing so with the intent of creating or amplifying black men as the enemy, that we are going to pay for it as well.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's real talk. I think that for all the work white supremacy through feminism has put in to divide us, it has hurt black women more. And I think I need black women to hear regular, everyday, average black men are not your enemy. We're not planning and plotting on you. We're not trying to beat you up. Most of us don't hit you. We'll walk away from your dumb behind when you put hands on us if we can. We want to take care of our family. I'm raising my son on my own. It's just me. I mean, we don't shy away from those things. The ones who do are pieces of shit, and the rest of us know that they're pieces of shit. So stop coming at us with the baseline being that we're bad people, with the baseline being that we're not good people, while your baseline is you want to jump on our back and ride. because you tired. We tired too. Anyway, that was another great show. So I want to thank everybody who watched now, people who are going to watch later. And thank you, Denise. And
Thank you, Brother Darryl.
you're welcome. And we'll see y'all next time.
Next time.
Peace.